The galaxy's most advanced civilizations once looked at Earth and saw nothing but a primitive, harmless species. They labeled humans as minimal threat and turned their attention to worthier rivals. But the Council's arrogance hit a fatal mistake. They had misread the truth. Humans were not prey, they were predators. Over centuries of neglect, humanity evolved in silence, spreading across their solar system, solving problems without outside help, and preparing for dangers no one believed existed. When the first alien fleets arrived, expecting easy victory, they vanished without a trace. What began as a mystery soon became a nightmare for the galaxy, as the predators they had ignored began hunting back. The story follows the tense final years of the Council as they realize, too late, that they had unleashed a threat they cannot escape, one that does not just kill, but erases entire civilizations from reality itself. The greatest mistake in galactic history began with a laugh, a low, dismissive rumble that echoed through the high stone arches of the Council chamber. It was the kind of laugh that came from certainty, the kind born from millennia of dominance. To the Council, the blue and green world flickering in the center of the chamber's holographic display was nothing more than a curiosity. A backwater. A place where a primitive species called humans played at space travel with fragile machines and chemical rockets. Counselor Fufo shifted in his wide, contoured seat, the polished synthetic armrests cool under all four of his massive, furred arms. The chamber's air was chilled to match the preferred climate of the majority species present, a sterile scent of filtered oxygen mixed with the faint musk of alien pheromones. Towering granite walls, carved in geometric patterns, surrounded them in a circle that had not changed in thousands of cycles. To Fufo's right sat Immel, a thin, gray-skinned being whose shifting tentacles tapped quickly across the controls. To his left was Acer, tall and serpentine, with a neck that swayed in slow, deliberate motions as his amber eyes scanned data feeds. On the central display, Earth's crude satellites glittered in orbit like scraps of foil. A single space station drifted above the planet, its solar panels stretched out like brittle wings. Another monitoring report, Fufo rumbled, his deep voice carrying hints of boredom. On the humans. He reached for a carved stone cup, the cool surface pressing into the pads of his lower hands as he took a long drink. They've achieved nuclear fission, Immel replied, his voice mild but tinged with scientific interest. And they are attempting to maintain a permanent presence on their moon. Achievement analysis suggests we begin preliminary classification. Classification? Fufo's fur rippled with amusement. They haven't even discovered basic fold technology. Their fastest ships would take a lifetime to reach the nearest star. They are centuries away from being worth consideration. He snorted, droplets from his drink spattering the console. Chemical propulsion, Immel. Imagine it. They might as well use sails. Acer's ridges rippled in faint amusement. Protocol requires monitoring of all species approaching spacefaring capability. Even the primitive ones. Primitive is generous, Fufo said, leaning forward to tap the display. A slow human cargo ship crept along a line from Earth to Mars, its projected arrival months away. At this rate, they'll exhaust their homeworld before they reach anywhere interesting. They are persistent, Immel countered, manipulating the display to zoom in on Earth's cities. Despite limitations, they maintain a constant orbital presence. And their colonies on Mars have been independent for 30 cycles. Fufo grunted, unimpressed. Linear progress. No exponential leaps. Not worth our time. He swiped a clawed hand across the display, bringing up the standard species development metrics. I propose reducing surveillance to once per century. Acer nodded. Seconded. Our resources would be better spent on the Inari. Their last fold drive tests were promising. Immel hesitated for only a moment before performing the formal sequence of approval, tentacles curling and uncurling in intricate patterns. The motion passed. Humanity's fate, at least in the eyes of the Council, was sealed as irrelevant. The chamber's rituals unfolded as they always had, Fufo's claws extended and retracted with mechanical precision, Immel's tentacles waved in formal farewell, Acer's ridges lifted and fell in silent acknowledgement. Another species classified, another box checked, another meeting concluded. 100 cycles passed. When Fufo entered the council chamber again, nothing had changed, not in appearance, at least. The stone floor gleamed from the countless footsteps of eons. The synthetic chairs had been replaced dozens of times, yet always in the exact same style. Even the temperature, regulated by the environmental systems, carried the same sterile coolness. But the display in the center told a different story. Now there were not one, but 3 inhabited worlds, Earth, its moon, and Mars. The void between them was dotted with human-built stations, satellites, and vessels. Their development rate exceeds projections, Immel said, his plates clicking as he studied the figures. One orbital station has become 14. And their settlements on Mars have tripled in size. Fufo snorted. And yet, still no fold technology. Still bound to their own star system. I stand by my classification. Acer added, their industrial output has risen 4% in the last 50 cycles. His ridges moved in slow, deliberate waves as he scanned the reports. Let them mine rocks and grow crops on Mars, Fufo said, tapping his claws on the armrest. They remain system-bound primitives. Immel's tentacles paused in midair. The Achievement Analysis Department recommends a direct observation mission. There are anomalies in their military patterns. Movements that do not match any model for a species at this stage. Fufo's fur prickled at the suggestion. A waste of resources. Perhaps, Acer said slowly, but the data is clear. They are fortifying orbital space in ways we do not understand. And our probes cannot explain why. The vote passed narrowly. Weeks later, Fufo stood on the observation deck of a cloaked council vessel in low Earth orbit. The planet rolled beneath them, blue and green swirled with white clouds. The council ship's stealth systems rendered it invisible to all predicted human detection methods. Their orbital defense network has expanded 30% in the last decade, Immel reported, his tentacles dancing across sensor panels. And yet, no wars with neighboring species. They have no neighbors. Paranoia, Fufo growled. Common among isolationists. Observe their feeding patterns, Acer suggested. Cultivated agriculture. Omnivorous, but aligned with peaceful species. The ship sensors swept over cities, industrial hubs, and military bases. Immel hummed softly. Ritualized warfare. Clear rules of engagement. They care for their wounded. These are not predators. Fufo sipped from his stone cup, watching the humans' chemical-powered aircraft streak through the atmosphere below. They're just better-fed prey, he said. They saw only what they wanted to see. When the observation concluded, the classification remained unchanged, primitive omnivores. Minimal threat. Fufo never imagined those words would one day be carved into the epitaph of the galaxy. Another 100 cycles passed. And then, without warning, the council's illusion of safety cracked. Fufo's claws dug deep into the stone floor of the chamber as he paced. His fur was stiff, his breathing heavy. The rich scent of his stimulant drink sat untouched on the console beside him. This was the first emergency meeting in over 3 centuries. They violated protocol, Immel said, his voice shaking as his tentacles flickered in agitation. The Krelly expedition entered the human system without authorization. They expected a simple conquest. Acer's ridges were fully extended in alarm. A battle was fought in Earth's orbit a cycle ago. And the humans won. The Krelly fleet is gone, every ship. No survivors. No debris field. Fufo stopped pacing. Gone. What do you mean gone? Vanished, Immel said. His tentacles pulled up a holographic replay from Krelly logs. It showed the fleet entering fold space near Earth. It showed nothing else. The feed simply ended. Now Nexus 5 is gone, Acer added. His voice was tight. A fully developed colony world, erased. As if it never existed. Silence filled the chamber. The walls, once comforting in their timeless design, suddenly felt like they were closing in. Fufo's fur rippled with an instinct older than his species' technology, fear. We misclassified them, Fufo said finally. The words were bitter in his mouth. We thought they were prey. They were system-bound primitives, Immel argued weakly, his tentacles curling in denial. Their technology does not explain this, Fufo cut him off. A primitive species doesn't erase fleets and worlds from existence. The display shifted again, showing Earth's system in its present state. The humans had expanded far beyond their 3 worlds. Outposts now dotted every major planetary body. Ships of unknown design filled the space between. The network was dense, interconnected, and built with no council guidance. Our defense fleet is assembled, Acer said. 27 capital ships, all carrying the latest weapons. We'll fold directly into their system and force a surrender before they can strike again. Fufo's claws scraped at the armrest. If they are building these capabilities, we must know how far it has gone. Immel, can our probes still operate in their space? Immel's tentacles stilled. No. The last 3 were lost. No wreckage. No signals. It's as if they never existed. The 3 counselors exchanged a long, uneasy look. Hours later, the fleet departed. In the chamber, Fufo monitored the mission feed, his claws tapping an uneven rhythm on the console. The capital ships approached their fold point, massive silhouettes outlined in starlight. Weapons charged. The plan was simple: appear in Earth's orbit, overpower their defenses, and compel them to stand down. The feed cut out the instant they entered fold space. Fufo waited. Minutes passed. Then hours. No transmissions. No emergency signals. The fleet never emerged. The chamber's air felt thin. Immel's tentacles had gone still, their color dimmed. Acer's ridges lay flat against his neck. They've taken them, Immel whispered. All 27 ships. Gone. Just like the Krelly, Acer said. Fufo didn't answer. The weight in his chest was heavy, colder than the council's artificial air. The weeks that followed were chaos. Every major species called for an emergency session. The great chamber was abandoned for a deeper, reinforced one, buried beneath kilometers of rock. The air filtration system strained under the load of so many pheromones and sense of fear. Play it again, Immel demanded for the 6th time. The hollow replay flickered to life. The Krelly fleet, in perfect formation, emerging from fold space. Human ships approaching, smaller, less advanced looking. Then the impossible: the human vessels moved as if they were alive, bending and flexing under forces that should have torn them apart. They've integrated self-repairing materials into their hulls, Immel said, his tentacles moving feverishly over the analysis. The structure adapts mid-battle. They learn in real time. On the recording, human weapons fired. Not high-energy beams like the Council's, but projectiles, missiles, and strange energy bursts that seemed primitive, until they struck. Krelly ships exploded, then folded in on themselves as if the space around them had collapsed. They're using our own fold space mechanics against us, Acer said, his ridges trembling. When our ships tried to retreat, they collapsed the exit points. Fufo stared at the feed, his fur prickling. Weaponized fold space. Controlled dimensional collapse. That's why there's no debris, Immel said softly. No survivors. No signals. They erased the target completely. The hollow shifted to show a map of recent fold space anomalies. Red markers spread across Council territory like a spreading infection. They've captured our technology, Immel said. And they're improving it. Impossible, someone from the assembly protested. Fold space mechanics take centuries to master. Perhaps for us, Fufo said, his voice low. But for predators? The room fell into uneasy silence. The word hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. They aren't expanding randomly, Acer said, pulling up another map. Look at the pattern. Every strike is precise. Methodical. They are dismantling our defenses piece by piece. Then we must hide, Fufo said finally. Everything. Our worlds, our fleets, our very existence. We'll fold space around our civilization and bury it so deep they cannot find us. Shouts erupted. Some species refused to live like prey. Others demanded a counterattack. But the data on the screens was clear, those who fought vanished without a trace. One by one, civilizations folded themselves away into sealed dimensional pockets. Entire star systems vanished from the galaxy. The Council called it the Great Retreat. Fufo knew the truth, it was running. By the 6th month, 17 civilizations had vanished into hiding. Only the most stubborn still fought openly, and their defiance ended in silence. In the cramped war room, Fufo monitored the evacuation progress. Immel's tentacles moved in frantic bursts over the console. Database purge at 97%, he said. All references to Earth erased from our star charts. It won't be enough, Acer muttered. Given time, they'll learn to peel open folded space as easily as they learn to use it as a weapon. Fufo stared at the dim holographic map. Whole sectors were dark. Stars that once gleamed with trade routes were gone, hidden behind the folds. He had never seen the galaxy so empty. But it wasn't safety. It was just breathing room. He knew predators didn't stop hunting just because prey hid. 10 standard cycles passed inside the sealed sanctuary. The Council's hidden chamber sat deep within the folds, a dimensional pocket suspended outside normal space, sustained by vast, automated systems. In theory, no one could find them. The folds bent reality itself, hiding every trace of their presence from conventional sensors. Entire civilizations slept in these hidden realms, their fleets idle, their worlds frozen in a perpetual twilight of artificial stability. To Fufo, it was both marvel and prison. The environmental systems maintained a perfect temperature, one designed to ripple pleasantly through his fur. The same synthetic chairs, shaped to fit his bulk, surrounded the chamber's circular table. His stone cup still held the same blend of stimulant he had favored for centuries. On the surface, nothing had changed. But beneath the stillness was a tension that never left. Even here, in the supposed safety of folded reality, the memory of what had driven them into hiding lingered like a shadow in every corner. Another decade of peace, Immel murmured from his seat, his tentacles curling lazily. Peace, Acer repeated with a trace of bitterness, his long neck swaying. Or the silence of prey hiding in its burrow. Fufo's claws drummed softly on the armrest. Better to be silent than erased. They had not spoken openly of the humans in many cycles. It was an unspoken rule, mentioning them brought unease, and unease led to fear. But the memories were impossible to fully bury, the sudden vanishing of fleets, the methodical collapse of worlds, the cold precision of a hunter that learned faster than any prey could adapt. If the Krelli had followed protocol, Immel said suddenly, this would not have happened. They attacked without authorization, without warning the Council. We were forced to respond. And in responding, Acer said, we showed them our weapons. We taught them exactly what they needed to surpass us. Immel's tentacles stiffened. They were primitives. Fufo's fur bristled. Primitives do not dismantle the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. We saw what we wanted to see, and it blinded us. That is the truth. Silence fell again, heavy and uncomfortable. The first sign came as a flicker in the chamber's lighting, a subtle dimming, so slight it could be dismissed as a system adjustment. Fufo noticed it immediately. In 10 cycles of hiding, the environmental systems had never once faltered. His claws tightened around the stone cup. The lights flickered again. A low vibration rolled through the floor, like the hum of a fold drive spooling up. Only there were no drives here, no ships, no gateways. The folds around them were stable, their layers locked. Until now. Status, Fufo demanded, his voice sharper than intended. Immel's tentacles blurred over the controls. No system errors. The energy fluctuation is external. His voice rose in pitch. Something is interacting with the folds. Acer's ridges lay flat. That's impossible. No one outside should even know we're here. The air grew heavier, as if the chamber itself resisted their movements. Somewhere above, the artificial sky fractured, a hairline tear that pulsed with white light. Then the tear widened. Fufo's fur stood on end. The light wasn't just bright, it was wrong, bending in ways that made his eyes ache. Through it, the void beyond their folds was not empty. A black, angular vessel hung there, larger than any ship they had ever seen. Its surface seemed to shift between forms, as if it hadn't decided what shape it wanted to be. A thin beam lanced from the ship, striking the edges of their folded reality. Every alarm in the chamber erupted at once. The folds are destabilizing. Immel shouted. His tentacles danced desperately over the controls, but the readings on the hollow were clear, their sanctuary was collapsing inward. Gravity twisted. The chamber stretched into impossible shapes, then snapped back, each fluctuation worse than the last. The air turned solid in Fufo's lungs. His vision fragmented, showing the room from a dozen impossible angles. They found us, Acer said softly, almost in awe. The walls shuddered as the folds buckled and collapsed, their perfect geometry torn apart by forces they could barely comprehend. The artificial space that had shielded them for so long unraveled like fragile silk in a fire. Fufo's claws dug deep into the armrests, but the chair was no longer solid, its edges frayed into threads of light. Immel's tentacles whipped wildly, then froze as the floor beneath him folded in on itself. Acer's long body twisted, caught between two realities at once. The last thing Fufo saw before the chamber dissolved into nothing was the black vessel beyond the tear, its surface shifting in eerie mimicry of the Council's own technology, only more advanced. More precise. More deadly. There was no debris. No survivors. From the outside, it would have looked as though the folded space pocket had never existed. Just a ripple, then silence. The humans had found them. Far away, in the cold emptiness between the stars, the black vessel's crew stood in their command bay. Their forms were humanoid, taller, stronger, their armor marked with the emblem of a predatory bird in flight. A voice crackled over the comms. Another pocket cleared. No resistance. The captain nodded. Mark the coordinates. Prepare for the next. A junior officer hesitated. Sir, these pockets, they aren't military targets. They're hiding. Should we? The captain cut him off. You've read the history. They classified us as prey. And when the Krelly came, they thought they could take us. This is what they started. The officer didn't reply. There was nothing to say. Beyond the viewing ports, the void was vast, filled with possibilities. Somewhere out there, more pockets hid, each one containing the remnants of civilizations that had once thought themselves untouchable. The hunt was far from over. The galaxy's hidden realms began to fall one by one. From deep within their folded sanctuaries, the surviving civilizations watched the reports trickle in, small anomalies at first, dismissed as sensor errors. Then the patterns emerged. Every few cycles, a dimensional pocket would collapse without warning. No signals escaped. No debris remained. And the humans left nothing but silence in their wake. Inside the Council's last refuge, Fufo stood before the central hollow. Red markers bloomed across the galaxy's invisible map, each representing a lost sanctuary. The once proud arcs of civilization, once stretching across hundreds of systems, now looked like a night sky with its brightest stars snuffed out. "They're not searching blindly," Acer said, his ridges tight against his neck. "Each strike is surgical. They already know where the pockets are." Immel's tentacles curled inward. "That should be impossible. Our fold coordinates were erased. Even we cannot track the others without direct links." "Then someone told them," Fufo said. His claws tapped against the edge of the table. "Or they've learned to sense the folds themselves." The thought hung in the air like a curse. The folds had been the galaxy's last great secret, a technology so advanced that even the Council's best engineers could not fully explain its mechanics. If humans had truly learned to detect them, there would be no hiding. 3 days later, they received the first transmission. It came not through the Council's network, which had been sealed off since the retreat, but through the folds themselves, as if the message were woven into the very fabric of reality. The hollow shimmered into focus, revealing the angular interior of a human command vessel. A single figure stood at the center. Tall, broad-shouldered, clad in matte black armor with the crest of the predatory bird embossed over the chest. The helmet was removed, revealing a face both alien and unsettlingly familiar, human eyes, sharp and unblinking, fixed directly on the Council. "This is Captain Mara Vance of the Terran Vanguard," the voice said, cold and measured. "You have taken refuge in our galaxy. You have hidden. You have erased your records and sealed your gates. It will not save you." Fufo felt his fur lift along his spine. The human's voice carried no triumph, no rage, only certainty. "You classified us as prey," Vance continued. "You ignored us until others came to take what was ours. You showed us your weapons, your drives, your folds. We learned. We adapted. Now, there is no corner of this galaxy where we cannot follow." The transmission cut out before anyone could speak. "That was a declaration," Acer said, his voice tight. "No," Fufo replied, claws scraping against the armrest. "That was a sentence." Immel's tentacles moved in sharp, agitated bursts. "We must go deeper. More folds. More layers. Hide within the hides." "It won't matter," Fufo said. "If they can reach us here, they can reach us anywhere." Over the next months, the dimensional purge accelerated. Human fleets struck in perfect silence, tearing apart pockets that had stood undisturbed for centuries. The folds collapsed inward, imploding the artificial spaces, compressing worlds and fleets into nothing. From the Council's sanctuary, they monitored what they could. One feed showed the fall of the Theran Enclave, its crystalline cities swallowed by a wave of white light as their fold collapsed. Another showed the Moltar fortresses, their weapon grids flaring once before vanishing without a sound. Each time, the humans left no survivors. Then came the message no one wanted to hear. "They found the Olm Spiral," Acer announced. His ridges trembled. The Olm Spiral was the oldest fold sanctuary in existence, a vast, labyrinthine refuge built by the first civilization to master dimensional hiding. Its folds were deeper, more complex than any other, woven through layers of reality like threads in a tapestry. It had been considered unreachable. The humans erased it in 12 minutes. By the time the Council met again, fear had turned to desperation. "We cannot let them dismantle us piece by piece," Acer said. "We must strike back. If we can cripple their fold drives, they built them from ours," Fufo said. "If they've improved them, then anything we deploy will already be obsolete." Immel slammed a tentacle against the table. "Then we cannot just sit here and wait to be hunted." "And what will you do?" Fufo snapped. "Send another fleet. Teach them more. You saw what happened the last time." The chamber fell silent. The truth was a weight none of them wanted to carry. They had no strategy that didn't also feed the humans more knowledge. Every battle would be another lesson, every defense another test for them to surpass. When the humans came for the next sanctuary, the Council didn't even see it fall. One moment, its fold signature pulsed faintly on the hollow. The next, it was gone, not a collapse, not a flare of energy, just erased. The map adjusted itself, the red marker spreading. "They're refining the process," Immel said quietly. "Making it faster." Fufo watched the pattern, claws biting into the chair's arms. Each strike was closer to their own position. The predators were circling. The next human transmission came without warning. It was Vance again, the same calm, steady voice. "You think we are hunting you for revenge? You're wrong. We are hunting you because we can. Because once you showed us what you were, we saw the truth. You will never stop watching, never stop classifying, never stop deciding who is prey. That cannot be allowed to remain." The message ended with coordinates. "Their coordinates. They're coming," Acer said. "Yes," Fufo replied. His voice was low, almost resigned. "And there's nothing we can do to stop them." Immel's tentacles stilled. "Then this is the end." "No," Fufo said, though the conviction in his voice was thin. "The end was when we decided they were harmless." In the stillness that followed, the alarms began to sound. Somewhere far above them, the first tear in their fold opened. The alarms were deafening. Fufo had heard evacuation sirens before, in training simulations, in historical recordings, but never like this. The deep, resonant wail filled every corner of the chamber, vibrating through the polished stone walls and the synthetic floor panels. It wasn't just sound, it was a signal written in their biology, a primal summons to flee. Immel's tentacles lashed across the control surfaces, flooding the hollow with data streams. The outer layers of the fold are destabilizing. Rate of collapse, accelerating. Acer's ridges flared and flattened in a rapid, involuntary cycle. "We still have inner layers. If we collapse them ourselves, they'll know," Fufo said, cutting him off. His claws gripped the armrest so hard the synthetic material began to split. "They're not following the folds. They're pulling them apart from the outside." On the main display, the first tier appeared, a jagged seam in the false sky above their sanctuary. Light poured through, bending unnaturally, refracting in ways that made the air seem liquid. Beyond it, the black human vessel waited, its angular hull shifting slowly, as though considering which shape would frighten them most. The first beam struck. It was thin, almost delicate, but the moment it touched the inner folds, the chamber shook violently. Stone dust drifted from the carved ceiling. Somewhere below, the deep hum of the dimensional anchors wavered, their perfect harmony breaking into discord. "They've bypassed the stabilizers," Immel said. His voice was thin, his tentacles trembling. Acer's amber eyes were wide. "They're inside our lock." Another beam followed, sweeping across the tear. The seam widened, and through it came the same white light they had seen destroy other sanctuaries. It didn't burn or shatter, it simply erased, folding the edges of their reality inward like the closing petals of a dying flower. "Divert power to the anchors." Fufo roared. Immel obeyed without question. The hum deepened, the artificial air pressure shifting as massive energy flows surged through the hidden infrastructure of their refuge. For a heartbeat, the folds resisted. Then the light intensified. The hum fractured entirely, replaced by a strange silence that made Fufo's fur bristle. The anchors weren't just failing, they were gone. The points that had held their reality in place had been removed, as neatly as a surgeon cutting out an organ. "They're not attacking the structure," Immel said softly, realization dawning. "They're rewriting it." The tear in the sky split fully open. A human dropship emerged, sleek, black, and disturbingly quiet. It descended into the sanctuary's air as if it had always belonged there. The white light spilling from its hull spread across the false horizon, eating away entire districts of the folded space. Fufo rose from his seat, all four arms tense. Acer coiled in on himself, ridges trembling. Immel's tentacles wrapped around a console, as though clinging to the last solid thing in existence. The dropship landed in the chamber's plaza. Its hatch hissed open. The first human to step out wore the same matte black armor seen in every intercepted transmission. The predatory bird crest gleamed faintly in the dissolving light. The figure removed their helmet. Captain Mara Vance. Her eyes swept the chamber once before settling on the three counselors. She walked forward with measured steps, each one deliberate. Behind her, more armored figures fanned out, their weapons lowered but ready. "You built this place well," she said, her voice calm. "Layers within layers. A fortress in the folds. But fortresses are just cages without doors." Fufo's claws flexed. "Why? You have hunted us across the galaxy. You've erased whole civilizations. What could justify this?" Vance stopped a few paces away, her gaze unwavering. "Justification? You think this is revenge? This isn't revenge. This is prevention." "Prevention?" Acer hissed, ridges lifting. "You called us prey," Vance said. "You watched us, measured us, decided our place in your order. You decided that when the time came, you would decide our fate again. That's what your council has always done. Every species that reaches the stars, you classify, you control, you remove threats." Immel's tentacles curled tightly. "We maintain stability. Without us, the galaxy would be chaos." Vance took one more step closer, and for a moment, the dissolving light behind her seemed to pulse in rhythm with her voice. "The galaxy is chaos. You just told yourselves you were above it. And when something didn't fit your order, you erased it. We learned that from you. Now, we're making sure no one can do it again." The chamber trembled violently as more of the sanctuary collapsed. One of the side halls simply vanished, replaced by a void of swirling white light. "You can't hide from us," Vance said, her tone still steady, almost quiet. "We'll find every fold, every pocket, every hidden world. Not because we have to. But because now we can. And once you can hunt anything, you do." Fufo stared at her, his fur bristling. "You've become what you think we are." Vance's expression didn't change. "No. We've become what you feared we could be. You just didn't see it soon enough." She turned to her soldiers. "Collapse it." The humans withdrew to their dropship, their forms briefly outlined in the light as the hatch closed. The vessel lifted, vanishing back through the tear. For a moment, the chamber was silent except for the deep groan of a reality coming undone. Then the folds began to collapse in earnest. The artificial sky shattered like glass. The plaza buckled and twisted. The carved stone walls split apart, the air itself turning to fragments of shimmering dust. Immel's tentacles went still, releasing the console. Acer's ridges flattened completely, his coils slackening. Fufo remained standing, his claws digging deep into the floor until it, too, was gone. As the light consumed the last fragments of their sanctuary, Fufo's final thought came with perfect, brutal clarity: hiding had never been safety. It had just been giving the predators time to learn how to reach you. There was no debris. No survivors. No trace that the Council, or its hidden worlds, had ever existed. Somewhere beyond the remnants of the folds, the black human fleet regrouped. Captain Vance stood at the viewport of her flagship, watching as the white light of the collapse faded into the void. A voice on the comm spoke. "Coordinates for the next pocket are ready, Captain." She nodded once. "Mark it. We move in one cycle." The officer hesitated. "How many are left?" Vance's eyes narrowed slightly. "Enough to keep the hunt interesting." The fleet turned as one, vanishing into fold space, not in retreat, but in pursuit. The galaxy that had once called them prey would never make that mistake again.